see by my record, there's, the time is 1 o'clock. Okay. I'd like to call to order the CPS Board of Trustees meeting to be held on June 28, 2021 at 1 p.m. At this time, I would like to ask Ms. Shanna Ramirez to confirm the quorum.
I can confirm we have a quorum. Trustee Steen, Trustee Kelly, Mayor, Chair Dr. Mackey, we have a quorum.
Thank you.
And I apologize, Vice Chair Gonzalez is also here, so all trustees are present.
Thank you. Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to ask Ms. Danae Myers to provide the evacuation message, invocation, and pledge allegiance.
Thank you, Chair Dr. Mackey. Good afternoon. My name is Danae. We first wanted to review the evacuation procedures so we are prepared to be safe in the event of an emergency. If you hear the fire alarm, follow the instructions in the announcement delivered through the PA system. If asked to evacuate, use the glass door exiting out of the boardroom to the outside. If that door is blocked, use the door at the rear of the room. Verbally alert others in the room of the fire and evacuate. Then move to the main parking lot in front of headquarters or the AT&T parking lot over the McCullough and Brooklyn bridges, whichever route is safer, and await further instructions. In the event of a situation like this, our security team will be monitoring the situation and will notify the appropriate emergency services and team members. We also have employees nearby who are trained to administer first aid if needed. Safety is always a top priority at CPS Energy, and while we hope this information is never needed, we want to be sure that we are always ready. Now, will you please stand with me for an invocation? We come before you today to give you honor and praise. Thank you for every gift that we have been given. We thank you for the opportunity to come and gather together this day. We ask for your hand of blessing on this meeting of the CPS Energy Board of Trustees. We ask that you guide and direct our meeting so that it is full of wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another. Thank you for helping us to accomplish our work and our goals this day. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'd like for turn it over to Loretta Kerner to conduct the public comment portion.
Thank you, Chair Dr. Mackey. The next agenda item is public comment, which provides an opportunity for members of the public to share thoughts on any of this meeting's posted agenda items. Here's how the process will work. We'll invite pre-registered speakers to speak in the order in which they registered, with in-person commenters speaking first, followed by virtual commenters. They may only address the board on CPS Energy-related business listed on the posted agenda for this meeting. Speakers should state their first and last name, what organization or group they represent, if applicable, and indicate the agenda item number they are going to speak about. For this meeting, we have one registered speaker who will speak in person, and we have one registered speaker who will speak virtually. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. Our first in-person speaker is Richard Pettis.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Perez. I'm President and CEO of the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, and I'm honored to be here today with you all in person. I come today with a message of appreciation and hope. Appreciation for the work that you continue to do for this great city. All of you, not just the appointed members of the board, but the staff here who continues to, day in and day out, do the hard work that makes this city move. The San Antonio business community is very, very appreciative of your continued work. We know how hard it's been these last several months. COVID, Uri, spikes, a whole bunch of other things that have really put our community in a very difficult position. But day in and day out, you continue to be focused on the needs of this great community. And the San Antonio business community understands it, sees it, and appreciates it. And so I'll close by saying that the business community wants to continue to partner with you in the hard work ahead. The report that came out last Friday, we know, was a difficult one, but it's one that has clarity now so that we can all come together and be able to do the work that will continue to make this great organization even greater. And so, Chairman Mackey, honorable members of the board, the San Antonio business community says thank you again. We stand with you in solidarity and know that together we will come out much stronger on the other side. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Mr. Perez.
In addition to being CEO, we do a little bit of cleanliness here too.
Absolutely.
Thank you all.
Now we will transition to our virtual speakers. Adrian, can you introduce our first virtual speaker? Thank you, Adrian. I'll now turn the meeting back over to Dr. Mackey.
Thank you, Loretta. We appreciate that. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our CEO and get our CEO's report.
Okay, good afternoon. We are very pleased that we're having the June 2021 meeting. Danae did an excellent job to talk about safety and exiting the building. I do want to provide a little bit of additional information. Like the rest of the community, we have seen, pleasantly, we've seen a slowdown in the infection rate here at CPS Energy. We did have an increase from last week of 1 case. Our total is up to 512 people who have had COVID. We only have 8 people in quarantine, which is significant. We've had over 200 at one time. So this is a big boost to our effectiveness from that standpoint. And we have no one in the hospital. I will tell you that, you know, some of the things that happen, extreme weather is always a problem for CPS Energy. It was very difficult during Uri to have our team go out and face the elements. The thing I always want to remind everyone is that they face the elements every single day. And the summer is not a light period for our team to deal with. As we know, the humidity has been stifling, and we have people out working in the field all the time. That includes on poles, digging, making sure that we retrench and put in lines in the ground, vault work, which can be extremely difficult in the triple digits when you measure. So I take my hat off, as usual, to our frontline employees because they find a way to get their work done. Fred is the COO, but he's always focused on the safety of our employees and executing safe work. We had an actively caring stand down this morning. We are trying to be as continuously focused on safety and making sure that they are doing all the measures they can to stay hydrated. And hydration, as we well know, happens the day before. It doesn't happen the morning of, it happens the day before. So again, we want to appreciate them. We always want them to go home in the same condition that they were entrusted to us by their families, so we continue to focus on safety for the summer. I did want to make one other comment. We are stressing to our employees of what they do away from home, because we have had a few incidents where employees are doing things out in the yard and they have injured themselves. And so we, again, are trying our best to get everyone to think about safety, both from a COVID standpoint, but just a physical, don't overexert yourself, know your limitations, ask for work, ask for help, and make sure that you're thinking about every bit of executing in the extreme heat. So that's that. I do want to talk a little bit about today, and I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to cover, but I'm also going to hit on what we're going to cover in July as well. This is a very important meeting. I think it's going to go fairly smoothly, but one of the most important things that's happened recently, as as we all know, is that Uri happened in February of this year. The city took, under the mayor's support and direction, a very decisive move to have a review done of Uri from before what happened, during the storm, and looking at the insights that we've learned as a community after the storm. So we have been participating in this process, I think, now for a couple of months. The report finally came out last week. We have provided to the board a hard copy of the full written report. There was a presentation made on Thursday. There was an extensive review of the substance of the report and the recommendations. We are going through it with a fine-tooth comb, but we do have an item on our agenda, and it is going to be item 8. I'm going to talk a little bit about the findings that occurred. We did have the benefit of having Chair Dr. Mackey and Vice Chair Gonzalez join us in that session. So we were all ears and open and listening to that feedback. I'm going to give a review of it. And Fred is also going to join me in terms of how we're approaching some work we've already done versus all the work. There were quite a few recommendations, and we're gonna address every single one of them and then provide you updates. So more context is coming on item 8. I did want to highlight that in addition to knowing that we have a lot of stakeholders here, I mean, everyone's a stakeholder, everyone's a customer. We do want to highlight that we do have stakeholders outside of San Antonio that are very much paying attention to all the things that are happening. And I did want to let the board know that actively we are working with the credit rating agencies to inform them about what we're doing. They have lots of questions. A lot of their questions currently are about mitigating the risk around what we saw in Uri, and even more so, what will we do concerning the Flex Power Bundle and Flex Step in terms of mitigation and how we're approaching that. And so we were able to share with them some of the information that we will cover with you next month. You've heard a bit of it here and there, but it's just interesting to know that the rating agencies are as interested in the decisions and how we choose to make those decisions and how we attempt to mitigate the exposures of every type of technology that we have. And so I'll get you some more information on that, but I did want to make you aware we had a follow-up presentation with one of the rating agencies this morning. So today, it'll be short. The content of it primarily will again be the CEP. Before that, on item 7, we do acknowledge that this is the last year for Trustee Kelly to serve on the board, and we got an extra bonus period with you since you bridged a previous term, but this is the last one. So there will be an item on the agenda to resurrect the selection of the committee to look at the candidates in our community, and the focus will be out of the quadrant of which Trustee Kelly serves. So we do need to take an action because we did not change the members. The members of that committee, by the way it was established under the prior chair, Mr. Steen, would be the board chair and the member of the board that is going to end their term. So those are the two primary. They ultimately bring their recommendations and insights back to the full board for that process, and we will be giving you a process to be able to do that consideration. But it is on the agenda, so we can kick that off this month. So I want to talk a little bit about the July meeting because we are trying to be efficient for this one, but we do want to make sure that the commentary is there, that we heard loud and clear a lot of the very good feedback and questions we got at the special meeting we had last week. So in July, we will be talking about several things, the Flex Power Bundle and the status of that and the focus on how are we focused on prioritizing certain projects that we think that are ready to go, some of which will also help us in our Shining Cities competition. to bring in more renewables, but in a way that we can mitigate that risk. We will also have a presentation in July on Flex Step. And we will bring back the budget item. I think we've had several presentations. We will not in July be asking for a rate increase. That is not what we're doing. But we will be talking about the budget, and we will be talking about the provisional gap that we have in the plan. We will do everything we can this summer to try to close it with other resources. We've seen a little bit better than expected uptick in wholesale sales. Not sure if that will close the gap, but everything that we can to close the gap before we ask the board for anything or the council will be pursued this summer. But we will bring the budget back to, again, at least make sure that you all are aware what we're managing to. And another major item that you'll hear about is the Tesla substation. Vice Chair Gonzalez led a session on a session, and Councilwoman Sandoval, this is part of her constituency, was there, and Chair Dr. Mackey. So we had an open public input session, very good, very interesting. We did have public comment. We also had public dialogue. We created a section where customers could ask us questions, and we tried to answer as many of them as we could. We do have some follow-up to do, but we'll be trying to close those comments out, relook at the proposal in light of the feedback that we recently got, and then we'll be coming forward with a staff recommendation for you all to consider in the July board meeting. And maybe the last item that you'll hear in the July meeting will be the auditor selection. I think the board has very much sent us a message about really making sure that we challenge the use of auditors. I think our team, comprised of audit services and the financial services group, did a really good job of putting an RFP out there. I think you'll be pleased. They really got, I think, more interest than we have normally gotten in our audit selection in the past, and they'll be bringing you a new recommendation in the July timeframe. I think those are the major things I wanted to cover on my report, and if there's any questions, please, I stand ready to answer them.
Does the board have any questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the report, Paula. Related to the debt carried from bills that haven't been paid, has there been any additional guidance from the state with regard to their emergency fund that was intended originally for rental assistance and the eligibility to use for utility assistance?
No, I still believe there's some more work for us to do there, but no, we have not gotten any clarity, but it is high on our list to get to that.
Okay. We might need an opinion. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions, comments? If none, we'll move on to consent agenda, approval of consent agenda. Minutes of the regular board meeting held on 4/26/2021. Minutes of the regular board meeting held on 5/24/2021. Minutes of the special board meeting held on 6/8/2021. Payment to the city of San Antonio for May 2021. Integrated security threat mitigation policy. F, procurement items, general services, welding mechanical services. Number 2, professional services, engineering services for communication system. Number 3, professional services, engineering, electrical engineering services for natural gas infrastructure.
Chair Dr. Mackey,
Yes.
I would suggest that we defer the vote on E alone until later in the meeting after the presentation.
Okay.
So just to be clear to everyone, if we vote in full on the consent items right now, it would not be on item.
Item E, yes. Okay. We have a motion.
Again, are you approving the whole thing then?
Yes, the whole thing except E. We're pulling E.
Okay. I'll move.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Kelly,
Second.
second by Ms. Gonzalez.
I do have
Any
one.
questions?
I do have one
Yes,
question.
yes, sir.
On the minutes of May the 24th, which would be
What page is that?
page 24 in your packet, it talks about that we typically would have brought our fiscal 22 budget in on February, and because of Uri and other things, that we'll be submitting it during the late fall. Are we still on target to do that? I did get the budget package where you answered a bunch of questions, and I thought that was an excellent report, but I'm uncomfortable in operating the business without a budget any longer than I absolutely have to. That's like flying an airplane without an altimeter. So I'd like to suggest that we do everything we can to bring that budget in as soon as possible. So the question is, are we still looking at a late fall budget presentation, or do you think we'll be able to move quicker than that?
Actually, we plan to bring it back to you next month. I think that was the outside estimate at the time, but I think we're going to try to bring it to you in July. Again, it'll have some provisional components, but we are using it in lieu of having the final approval, but we'll bring that forward in the July board meeting, and we'll not have to wait until September.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You have any other questions? We have a motion by Mr. Kelly, a second by Ms. Gonzalez.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
None opposed. Motion carries. And E will be at the end of the meeting. Okay, we'll begin with the regular agenda. And this is the committee report, Operation Oversight Committee, meeting held on 5/10/2021. We have the OOC Alignment Risk Committee meeting held on 5/10/2021. We have the Master Planning Oversight Committee meeting held on 5/24/2021. We have the Technology and Resilience Committee meeting held on 6/2/2021. In the interest of time, I'd like to accept the submission of the reports for the record in lieu of having them read during the meeting. Is that okay with Mr. Kelly and Ms. Gonzalez?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a? So that's discussion right there. And we have the one, the TNR Alignment Risk Committee, Subcommittee meeting held on 6/2. I missed that one right there with Ms. Gonzalez. We don't have to vote on that one, that's just for discussion.
Just for discussion.
Okay,
And-
thank you, and that's gonna be in a minute.
Yes, sir. I just want to clarify for the minutes that Vice Chair Gonzalez, you were approving including the Technology and Resilience Aligned Risk Subcommittee meeting being included in the package rather than read into the minutes, correct? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Okay, next item number 7, we have nomination committee assignment. This is a voting item. Let's see, that's on the nomination committee, CPS Board of Trustee Committee assignment update. Nomination committee has Mr. Ed Kelly, Chair, and Willis Mackey as a member. Do we have a motion? We have a
Second.
Ms. Gonzalez, Mr. Steen moved, Ms. Gonzalez second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Next, we have item number 8, review of Committee of Emergency Preparedness, CEP findings. We have Ms. Paula Gold Williams presenting that with Mr. Fred Bonnewell.
Thank you very much. So I gave a bit of a preview in my opening, but I want to highlight again that the committee was comprised of,
Ms. Williams?
yes, sir.
It might be helpful for you to know, of course, when there was a presentation of the council, the mayor was there, and Dr. Mackey was there, and Ms. Gonzalez, but I watched the full thing on television, so that might be helpful for you.
That is.
I had the benefit of hearing that, and I think, Ed, did you tell me you did also?
I watched it on TV.
Very good, perfect. All right. So, what I would like to do for the record is just highlight a couple of things which actually are included in my report, so I can hit the highlights. We will post this and attached to the website, but I do want to hit a couple of things. I think it sets the right tone. I also want to talk a bit about how we're going to move forward, and again, have Fred talk about a couple of things from his perspective as the new COO, probably that we did not get into last Thursday. So, so that said, I do want to acknowledge a couple things. Again, deep appreciation for all the members. We had both community members and we had council members. It is interesting, we do have several new council members. We're going to spend some additional time with them, getting them up to speed, and then talking about the resolution. We are also going to offer individual sessions to every council member to, again, let them ask the questions that they have around the report from our perspective. And we are also, we've started some desktop work with the city of San Antonio. Under the city manager's perspective, we started some things. We are working on a tighter network of communication, particularly between our owner and the water company. And so there are several conversations going on in the background, not necessarily focused on in the report, but already underway. I think a synopsis of everything is ERCOT, Texas in particular, has a lot of generation. And it's a very diverse generation portfolio. But it is a energy-only market, which means it really relies on very low-cost power, but there isn't a great system to incent adding capacity on the system. And it's been like this for some time. I think everybody knew that that was the case. And so you haven't seen a lot of what we call base load generation coming on the grid. We have seen intermittent generation, wind and solar, coming out on fast rates. We are starting to see more battery capacity, but we have a very light level of battery capacity, and still the limitation on that is there's not a long duration on those systems. So we do have a portfolio of generation inside of ERCOT that's getting older, and we did have a lot of good work that happened during the legislative session, but it did not look at things like what is it going to take in terms of market design to put more capacity on the grid. Did not really look at that. It did not look at whether there should be additional interconnection to other grids to give us more flexibility in case there are problems on ERCOT. ERCOT system is huge in itself, but we did have some issues with islanding. And it didn't fully look at, there's some remedies associated with the pricing, but there is no repricing mechanism. So still, we're assessing the legislative benefits that we got as a state, but I think there will be notable gaps in what we saw in terms of repricing and financial assistance. And we'll have to weigh those options against our option to do our own financing. In other words, if the state provides certain opportunities to take on the financial burden, we'll have to weigh whether the cost of interest to do that is more expensive and not as great an option as us trying to solve our own problem. We continue to focus on the legislative session. We haven't seen the full agenda for the special session, but we're going to, keep being hopeful there. We continue to want to talk to our regulators. We are negotiating with our counterparties, and again, we're pressing on our litigation, but all of that continues to happen. I think I want to stress again for the entire board, now that you're here, in case you have questions, the analysis did not show that the west, south, and east sides of town were disproportionately affected. Unlike some of the commentary, people automatically assume that those parts of the city were disproportionately affected and the north sides of town actually had more power and less outages. In reality, the north and the northwest had more outages, and that is actually because of the population growth, how big the circuits were, how much we had to do in terms of reducing the amount of demand on the system. That said, we still are in the process of working on how can we improve the outage management process. Our team, we didn't talk about it a lot, but our team is already looking at what has been identified as a critical circuit. We are finding that some of those are aged designations. They are no longer applicable. So we're cleaning up that list of critical circuits, which will give us more interruptible circuits to be able to rotate. We got to a point where we could not rotate because the demands were so high and we didn't have enough interruptible circuits. And what we also didn't talk about so much is we are looking at technology solutions. We're looking at whether or not the AMI system or other management systems that we can invest in will give us the better flexibility for us to move forward from that standpoint. There was a significant amount of opportunity cost, discussion around opportunity cost. If we cannot self-produce, that means that we cannot cover our costs and operate for our community, and then we have to go out to the market. That risk is always out there, but it was heightened during the storm because we didn't have our STP units, one of our coal units, and the supply chain around gas was highly hampered. And if you think about that, we had about a 15% lack of availability of our capacity. What we need to do is narrow that to try to get it to zero. And then again, we can control our destiny and control our costs more in the future. We will not be able to hedge against, over the long term, it'll be very hard to hedge against a 15,000% to 16,000% pricing spike. And, you know, you can still have some equipment failures, but we do believe that we can increase and improve some of the things that we're doing and systemically look at our portfolio. I will tie in that the existing portfolio for us is getting old, and we have 3,000 megawatts of capacity coming offline. We talked about that last week over the next decade. So it is both making major decisions and detailed decisions to get us through from now to the next 10 years. We are committed to improving our communication strategy. Vice Chair Gonzalez has continued to help us think about the way that we communicate to the public, and we take all input. Also, the mayor has provided us some high-level oversight, so insight. So we're going to focus on that. And we're going to look at how our emergency management operation systems functions versus what we do is collaboration with the city and SAWS and the other entities across San Antonio. I'm going to, basically close with the team has already started some of these improvement measures, looking at the lessons learned, looking at what we can do to enhance our weatherization efforts. We don't have, new industry standards. We definitely have lessons learned from those perspectives. We are looking at the hedging. We are looking at the storage, the dual fuel, all those things that we need to bring back to you as we look at the different steps that we can do. But they did not wait for the report. We were already launched into that. And we have leadership, Paul Barham, Frank Alvarez, and then we have two other high-level executives, Garrick Williams and Sean Eddy, that are also going to help us. We're focusing a lot of our talent and resources, and they all report up to Fred. I just want to indicate again that our commitment is to find new solutions, make the improvements necessary, and we will be providing the board and council periodic updates as we go along. And with that, I will turn it over to Fred to talk a little bit about his leadership role and how he's approaching the objectives that we have. Is your mic on?
Thank you, Paula. Thanks to the Board of Trustees and our mayor for entrusting me into this role as your Chief Operating Officer. I also want to take a moment to thank Chairman Reed Williams for a very comprehensive report that I've spent the weekend going over, and it's very well done, in my opinion. And so what I'd like to share with you is my mission here is to develop the safest, most reliable, most affordable, and resilient energy system in the country. Period. Full stop. That's what my aim is. So this centers around three-pronged approach: reliability, resiliency, and continuous improvement. Those are the main factors that have given me and my teams that I've been fortunate enough to lead throughout my career the most success. So reliability, focus here is to continue the leadership to accelerate Paula's efforts to create a culture of issue mitigation. We will be adopting an analytics and data-driven approach to how we take units offline, to how we make decisions every day on our circuits, and how we are impacting the public and the community that we serve. So an example of this is, it's not just about the warranty requirements on certain pieces of equipment. We have a very comprehensive maintenance program, both in our electric distribution, gas, as well as power generation. But it's finding the opportunities with this data to get in front of these warranty requirements with the data we have, and to figure out how we can, with razor-sharp focus, provide the maintenance at the right time that will give that piece of equipment longer runtime, where we won't necessarily be running our equipment to failure. And I think that's really important. Secondly is about resiliency. We need collectively to make well-placed investments in our internal information sharing practices overall and procedures to ensure we are acting with the best information possible. We know that there are certain ERCOT mandated outages, and we need to be able to adjust to those immediately and effectively. And so the third one is continuous improvement. As I've, throughout my career, and particularly since I was at NextEra Energy, we had a very comprehensive focus around continuous improvement, where every manager in the company led an effort around an improvement opportunity for whether it was a piece of equipment or a process improvement. We've done that here in Gas Solutions. Over 40 teams we've launched over the last 3 years, and that in fact is what assisted us and enabled us to keep the gas system running during Storm Uri. And I think the team that led those efforts were very much responsible for taking the right actions at the right place in the right time. With the gas system, our peak is in the winter, unlike the electric system, which is in the summer. So, in my opinion, you know, this is a great time to be working in our organization. Not just because we get to make CPS Energy better than ever after a storm, but because true game-changing innovations have occurred at this company and is what made this company very formidable in the industry. And that's what we need to continue to harvest as an organization. Frankly, I am the guy who's responsible for making the trains run on time. In any kind of weather, at all times, day or night. The buck stops with me and our operations. Although one can say the final buck stops with Paula, as operators, as being responsible for the operations, I am responsible to ensure that the buck doesn't get passed to her. That it's under my responsibility and my accountability to make that happen. And I'm entrusted into this role, and I have a great deal of confidence in our 3,000 employees here at this company. They are great operators. I've spent extensive amount of time in the field already in the 2 weeks that I've served you as Chief Operating Officer, and I can tell you, there's not an employee in this company that they take their operational responsibility very, very seriously. And they know how to operate these units and these circuits effectively. So this isn't about just taking the resolve from the storm. This is to make operational reviews just part of our DNA all the time. It's where I came from, it's what we did, and it's what made my history of working with great companies really good, is to take advantage of our employees and their know-how and enable them to tell us, in many cases, how to get better. They know how to run these units. They know how to cycle them. And they know the behavior of these units. And we have to count on them and their guidance and their judgment to help us. And under the leadership of Paul Barham and Frank Alvarez, their teams have already been surrounding these recommendations way before I took the helm of this position 2 weeks ago. And that's really the foundation of what I wanted to share with you today. We have a lot of work yet to do, but we're going to do it. Where we won't just become, you know, the Winter Storm Uri laid bare a lot of weaknesses. But if we approach this right going forward, then we'll be ready. When the units are called for, we have to be able to respond with certainty on time. Thank you.
At this time, thank you, Mr. Barnwell. At this time, do we have any questions or comments from board members? Yes, Mayor.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Paula and Fred, for the response. I thought the discussion at the council last week was a good one. It was a starting point. From here forward, what we'll be looking for from CPS and from SAWS and from the city and its partner EOC entities is implementation of the recommendations. Obviously, each of those boards of governance, whether it's the SAWS trustees, this board, or the city council, will be in a position of oversight and accountability. So I've asked the city manager to begin working with Paula and Fred, with their counterparts at SAWS and the EOC, to come up with an implementation strategy that can be updated to the council, obviously updated to the boards, and available for public scrutiny. So we have our recommendations. I do hope you look these over. They're available through a website. There's still the report itself is at sanantonio.gov/emergency-preparedness. That's where we'll also lay out the high-level implementation program and timeline, obviously in concert with the entities. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Gonzalez, you was.
Yes, thank you for those speaking points. I've had the privilege of actually participating in several public input sessions, whether it's been implementation of RAC or whether it's been at the public input meeting we just had last week, or even being present at the effort that was led by Reed Williams and the committee. You mentioned internal resiliency. And I will have to tell you that as a trustee, I think one of the biggest things that we need to work on, and we didn't mention Rudy Garza's role, is three things. Our ability, again, I think one key area that we must focus is really the external resiliency. And that is that the community understands that our main role is to enhance and support that ecosystem that's expected of reliability and affordability, right? And that really starts with three key areas. And that is, again, our ability to accept that change, that market conditions have changed, and those market conditions is environment, business models, they're changing. And when we must be very diligent and be self-aware problems, I think that some of the language that I want to hear and some of the things that I want to see at CPS is that it's a problem. It really isn't. I think that we have the infrastructure in place. We have the right people potentially in place. What we need to start really focusing is really, again, I go back to how can we beef up our external resiliency, right? There's an expectation in the community. There's some areas that the community right now does not trust us. And that community isn't just a ratepayer. That community could also be our county partners, again, our small business or large business, the workforce that works for both CPS and outside our partners. We need to really, one of the things I heard constantly was communication, right? We've done some baby steps in those areas, and that's why when you're working with Rudy and you're working with Frank and you're working with Paul, I think that communication component needs to really be focused on and making the most complicated very simple. The average person doesn't know about capacity buying or firming up capacity. They just care whether it's hot or cold, that there's reliability. We cannot afford for things not to be reliable and for us to communicate whether we're working with the city's, emergency department. And I think a key component is that affordability, right? That every decision that we make here at CPS is with affordability in mind and not at the risk of having reliability. And as trustees, I think that that's going to be one of our biggest, opportunities, and that is to leverage the brain power and the experience on this board to be able to work together, right? Together with both internal and external to build that reliability and affordability that's expected of us as trustees. We are responsible, we have a fiduciary responsibility, but more importantly, we have a safety responsibility to our partners to making sure that this happens, whether we get funding from the state or not. Somehow we need to figure this out. And so I'm glad that, Fred, you're understanding the expectation and the role that's expected, because know that I will be making it a top priority to make sure that we improve on that external, that we win the trust of everybody that we work with, because lately, I don't think people trust us to do the good things that I know that we're capable, that we've done in the past. So we really need to focus on earning that trust again. And so I'm going to be working with all of you in whatever capacity that I can to ensure that that reliability and the affordability component is there and that we win and earn the trust of everybody that we work with.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Do we have any other questions or comments? Mr. Steen?
So my questions relate to recommendation 1B, and I'd like to return, Ms. Gold-Williams, to something I questioned you about at our last meeting, because it's a CPS-related issue that I'm being asked about a lot. So we have state officials expressing optimism that there'll be enough power to meet demand for the remainder of the summer. And as we know, in its summer forecast for grid conditions, ERCOT calculated that the summer's reserve margin would be 15.7%. And interrupt me if anything I say is not correct, so far so good. So that's bigger than last year, and it's projected to grow, and mainly thanks to renewable generation joining the grid at 15.7%. However, skeptics are painting a different picture, contending that the reserve margin relies on certain assumptions that may not bear scrutiny. And there are two I want to focus on. So the first assumption is, on average, this is an assumption coming up with that reserve margin, on average only 5% of thermal generation, and for the audience, that's nuclear, natural gas, and coal, so only 5% would be down during outages. And so these skeptics say that 95% capacity is way too optimistic for a thermal fleet as old as our state's, in which nearly 1/3 of the plants are more than 40 years old. And the second assumption is that calculation of reserve margin, in the calculation of reserve margin, it's allowing the variability in wind output between 19% and 61% of total generation capacity. But in fact, and correct me if I'm wrong, we've already had days this summer when wind was producing only 10% of total capacity. So skeptics say to expect trouble when slow winds and power plant outages coincide. So here are my questions for you. Can we realistically expect 95% performance from aging plants?
Yes, we can expect that, but if you say, can we expect that every single day without any extra effort and involvement by customers? Probably not. So we typically have, over the summer, a pretty high level of effectiveness of plants. But to your point, every single year a plant gets older. And when you put in there that equipment related outages, things that you can't, it's like, your oil, you may need it faster than you need it in your car. Different things happen with equipment failures all the time. So a couple of weeks ago, we did see where there was a lower than 95% availability of plants, and there was trouble getting the wind capacity up. What happened is the state put the alert out, we put out an alert, we talked about conservation. Conservation made the difference. So I don't think we'll be in a case where, unfortunately, the community doesn't have to kind of think about conservation. I think that's going to be a critical piece that will help some of those situations that we have during the summer when we have pressure on capacity and renewables, for whatever reason, aren't producing.
Right. So my second question, shouldn't we ask this, shouldn't we, I can't read my own writing here, shouldn't we look to the state, or shouldn't the state be aiming for a higher reserve margin?
I would agree, yes.
And what should it be?
Well, it's a higher reserve margin, or it's also how do we do it? If we do it solely with renewables, I don't think that's going to get us where we need to be. We need a balance, just like the Flex Power Bundle is a balance. It's not just all solar. You have a mix. So you could have a lot more intermittent renewable power, but it doesn't necessarily increase the quality of your reserve margin. So yes, along with a balance of added capacity. And as far as that's concerned, I mean, look, CPS Energy typically has reserve margins of at least the 13.75%, but we've had years where we've had 20%, maybe closer to 30%. That's kind of your best case scenario, but that's expensive. You're going to put in capacity that you don't always utilize. And I think when you're thinking about the grid, what we need to do is think about it from a statewide perspective. So I don't have the actual calculation, but I would tell you the quality of the megawatts we add, when we add them, what are they trying to mitigate, matters in addition to just getting more capacity. And I don't think anybody's put an exact calculation on it.
But if we could reach a 20% statewide, that would
Helpful.
we'd be good, right?
Very, very helpful.
So springing off the recommendation 1B of the Emergency Preparedness Committee, shouldn't the state be doing everything it can to connect our grid to other grids?
I think that is something that we should look at as an option. Here's, I think, the one problem. You can't solve this problem and say, as long as we connect, that'll solve everything, because there were areas that were adjacent to the state of Texas that also had energy issues, but it will help. And so anything we could do to broaden out our portfolio would be helpful. Now, there are more regulations and there are more pressures that come along with that, but I definitely think as a state, we should be discussing interconnection as an added value, a value-added option.
Of course, that was the recommendation of the committee. But so obviously, in your role as CEO, requires you to focus on running this company to the best of your ability. But in what ways are you and CPS Energy involved in the statewide discussion of these issues that we're talking about?
Well, from the very beginning, I mean, we reached out to the Bexar County delegation on both sides of the aisle to make sure that they understood the implications that happened. I mean, there were challenges for us, but the implication is this was a horrible experience for their constituents and our customers. And so we've been very active in having regular conversations with elected officials, participating in their group meetings and their committees, offering enhancements to the legislations that they've had. They have my number. They call me regularly. So we and the team that's under Rudy Garza currently, Kathy Garcia and Carrie Myers-Torres, we're completely available to this legislature to be helpful.
But just to be clear, you're not as sold as, for example, Reed Williams is on joining with these other grids.
I think they would be very helpful, but they will bring some other complexities. I actually think market design for ERCOT is as important, if not more important. An energy-only market is going to be problematic, so we got to get the capacity issue fixed, because we need to make some of our own investments in the state, but I do think interconnection can help us, particularly in the interim.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions, good comments, and that's Very well answered.
I've got a question. If you had something you.
No, you go ahead, Mr.
Well, first I want to reiterate what has been said. I think Reed and his team did an excellent job on the report, and I did get a chance to watch the television presentation. The question I have, though, is it seems that we are making the assumption that an energy-only market is not good and a reserve capacity market is good. And those may be true assumptions. But I would like to know the degree to which they are good assumptions. What I think I would like to see us do, the mayor mentioned an implementation plan. I'd like to see a list of the implementation ideas, and I would like to see each implementation idea under a cost-benefit analysis. I gave the example the other day. At my home, I could worry that somebody might rob me. And so I can put in a burglar alarm system pretty inexpensively, and that helps. But I could still be robbed. If I build a moat around my house and a fort and attach machine guns to each corner, I'll probably never be robbed. But it's going to cost me a hell of a lot of money. And so I need to see some type of an interaction between what should be done and what the cost-benefit analysis is on each one of those. So just to make a broad statement that an energy-only market doesn't make sense and a reserve capacity market does make sense doesn't tell me anything. I need to disaggregate that. And I need to know what it means to move from an energy-only market to a capacity market. Or I need to know what it means to say that we're going to harden our system substantially. Fine, all of that sounds great. But what does it mean in terms of dollars and cost-benefit analysis? And I think we definitely have to do something like that. Otherwise, the pendulum will swing so far over that we'll be doing dumb things. And we certainly don't need to do that. One thing that I know this sounds like heresy, but something that nobody's talked about is that for 20 years now, we've had an energy-only market, and it has saved this state billions of dollars, according to all of the figures I've seen. Now, I don't know, I haven't tried to measure that, but I've heard that energy costs to our consumers in Texas have averaged 5 to 15% below the national average. I don't know if that's true or not, but let's assume it was something. And it's been in effect for 20 years. So if you were to take those savings and accumulate those with a compounded rate of return on those savings for 20 years, it would be one huge number. And it might be a much bigger number than what we lost in Winter Storm Uri. So I don't want to get lost in the idea of, oh my God, look at all this money we lost. We did. And look at all the hardship we went through. We did. But look at all of the benefits that we had for 20 years. And nobody that I've heard of is looking at that side of the coin. I enjoyed the fact that my energy costs were a whole lot less than my friends in other states. And I've been doing that for 20 years. Now, I paid the price all of a sudden for 5 days in February. And was it worth it? I don't know. But I think we need to look at both sides of the equation, and we need to step back and not get caught up in the emotionalism, and we need to make hard decisions on a cost-benefit analysis and make sure that we don't do dumb things going forward.
If I could, yes, sir, all that, we will definitely look at the options. I mean, I will say, and this came up in the presentation to the council, not everything costs a lot of money. A lot of it does, but we are doing some things that are not that expensive. So we are looking at cost on every single option that we're doing, and we'll bring that forward. And discuss those as we look at those options. You're right, you know, you can make a platinum system, and it could be very expensive and not that effective. I also just want to clarify, I'm not saying that a capacity market is the exact thing we need to do, but I am saying that thinking about capacity and maybe a hybrid of what we have would be helpful. The energy-only market has been extremely effective in terms of affordability. And it's also, you know, I would say that there has been a kind of an agnostic view of technology. So it's been very open to new technology, battery storage, renewables, those kind of things. But when we introduce more intermittency and aged plants, that's the issue that we have. The last plant we built cost $1 billion. So what we need to think about is, are there strategically across the grid, should there be some blend of capacity investment that actually helps us? Because the landscape we have today in terms of weather patterns, cyber attacks were not an issue 20 years ago, but we have all of those things now. In light of what we have now, does that make sure that we put in and think about investments differently? And I think that's what we are saying. We are not saying that a capacity market will solve all those issues, but we think the elements of that are valid for us to look at and bring back to you all as board members and show you a range of options of things that we can do to be most helpful. And we'll do that.
I wanted to follow up on what Mr. Kelly. So and Mayor, maybe you could help me with this, but I understand SAW's got that Black and Veatch report, and it talked about what they needed to do on the pumping stations, and I think attached a pretty big number to it. And I thought I read maybe that Robert Fuente has already concluded that that's going to be too expensive to do. So talking about cost-benefit analysis, I may have that wrong. Maybe you could correct me on that.
No, so the Black and Veatch, which again was looking at critical circuits related to pumping stations, made a pretty broad estimate. I wouldn't take that as gospel truth. I think it was in the ballpark of 200 million for for what it would take to put each of their critical pumping stations onto generators. I think they have yet to look at alternatives, power generation alternatives. There are several in existence. Also, which pumping stations would need ultimately to be on generators. But that discussion it was only a very quick briefing. The board has not weighed into implementation yet of that report. I don't know if you're done with your thought, John. If not,
No, I would just going off what Ed Kelly was talking about, which is all these things involve a cost-benefit analysis. And I think that maybe what you're saying is that when they threw out that $200 million number, the reaction was, at least I guess from the SAW staff, was we can't do that. That's too much. But now they're looking for other ways to mitigate it, but not at that price.
I wouldn't even say that the reaction was we can't do that. It's a big number for SAWs. So it's a question of determining, again, level of priority relative to the, I hate to use the term, but it would be return on investment. Let me caution us to talk, when we're talking about return on investment with resiliency, there are scores of people across Texas whose family members aren't with them anymore. And I would suggest that they're not counted in return on investment with regard to emergency preparation expenditures. And so when we're thinking about the last 20 years of the energy market, I would hate to just fall on the bottom line of dollars and cents return, because it has cost us real lives in Texas. Now, with respect to the report, I think it would be a mistake for us to focus on the things that we can't control. I think advocacy is one thing, and I'm sure there will be debate, plenty of political debate, locally, statewide, nationally as well, with respect to the market and how what I would call a quasi-competitive market is returning for Texans. But with respect to the report, I think there's a lot of things, as Paula mentioned, little things go a long way. And some of the items, actually most of the items in the report are well within our control. And I think do have to have some sort of cost and scoping done for each of them, but weatherization, in some cases, maintenance, and a lot of it is communications and coordination with our sister agency and then with the city itself. So I think we've got to focus on, as a board and as a staff, what we can control. And again, advocate where we can advocate, but a lot of the things that we're talking about and that were indicated in the report have caused us complicating issues are not going to be ours to modify ultimately. It will be us speaking out as a board of the largest electric and gas utility in the country. Let's see how far that gets us in Austin once we determine the course we'll take.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions or comments? If not, Mr. Bonnewell, if you could look at our last report in 2019, Black and Beach that we did, which I did read the report here last few months. It covers at least 80 to 90% of everything that transpired during Uri. So, colleagues, please get a chance to review that report. There's 3 reports, and it covers everything that we expect to happen. And it talks about the funding and talks about all the things that winter and weatherizing our plants. And I think it was just very informative to review that. So I'm asking Mr. Bonnewell, would you please look at that right there for us?
Yes, sir, I will.
It covers the things that we need to operate the plants.
So you said 2019,
Yes, yes.
Black and Beach?
I don't know if it was Black and Beach was one of my, I don't have it in front of me.
I think it was actually Scott Madden.
No, there was one in 15 and 2019.
I don't think,
It was 3 reports, 111, 115, and 119. But I know I read the Black and Beach report. It's in there. I read it, I have it. And I can get I may be wrong about the time, but I have the date, and I could get that to Mr. Bonnewell or anybody else that want to do it, because I have all 3 reports at my house. I asked for them. And there was a 2019 report, yes, that I just got recently. But the Black and Beach report, yes, that's what I know. I read it completely.
what did we do a 2019 report on?
We did a couple of reports on weatherizing and what we can do, and those actions, they were, the way they were lined out, we did execute those. But now we're going to have to look at it in terms of the duration that we experienced to see what else we could do. But we can go over that with you as well.
I think the only other component that I don't want to forget that came out of the conversation is really the conservation education component. I know that's a little early right now, but I do know that that's going to be another area that we need to focus on, that we can control, right? The education component of conservation. And so I'm looking forward to getting some additional feedback on that.
Thank you. At this time, I would like for Ms. Shanna Ramirez to take the board into executive session.
At this time, the board is going to recess into executive session to discuss matters that have been duly posted under several provisions of Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including consultation concerning attorney-client matters under Section 551.071, personnel matters under Section 551.074, security personnel or devices under Section 551.076, and to deliberate, vote, or take final action on competitive matters under Section 551.086. At the conclusion of the executive session, the board will reconvene in open session and continue the meeting. It is 2:09 p.m. right now.
Ms. Ramirez, can I clarify that what you just read is what's listed on the agenda for today, right? In
Yes, sir.
terms of all the sections of the government code?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
goodness, what are you up to? I had to look at your badge.
I'm telling you. I just met him. Yeah, absolutely. Been a while. E, and after item E, we would.
Never once, and I never worried about it. We're gonna think one up for you. I didn't worry about it.
Okay, thank you. It's, bring us out of close. At this time, Mr. Ramirez, could you bring us back into open session?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair Dr. Mackey. It is 4:07 PM, and the board has concluded its executive session. I can confirm that there were no votes taken and that no matters were discussed that were not part of the posted agenda. We do have a quorum. I see Trustee Steen, Vice Chair Gonzalez, Trustee Kelly, the mayor, and Chair Dr. Mackey are all present. Chair Dr. Mackey, I would like to direct your attention to item E of the consent agenda that was deferred earlier in the meeting. I'd like to turn it over to you, sir, for any discussion on that matter.
Okay, at this time, we'd like to have a motion on integrated security threat mitigation policy. Do we have a motion? Mr. Kelly moved. We have a second? Second by Mr. Steen. Okay, we have any questions, any comments? If not,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, motion carries this time. Before we close our meeting, at this time, we have some distinguished people that are here this evening with us. And as a board, and not breaking any rules or policy before we close the meeting and we meeting as a board, do you think it's good that it's okay that we can visit with them before we close the meeting? Or do we like to see us close the meeting before we visit with the people?
For clarity, it's probably better to go ahead and close the meeting so we don't have to record every conversation.
Okay, okay. Hey, that sounds good. At this time, I'd like to get a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
Okay,
Lord, Jordan.
motion to adjourn by Ms. Gonzalez. We have a second? Second by Mr. Kelly. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you all very much. And we have distinguished guests here that we would like to visit with at this time.